Jesus doesn't always give us a ticket out of difficulty. He gives us this. I'll be with you. I'll be with you. I don't care how hard it gets. I'll be with you. I won't leave you. And then I believe he says this. I know what it is to go through a hard time. Right? And though nobody was there for me, I'll be there for you in your hard time. I found this picture. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's from The Passion of the Christ. Sorry, Bryce, I didn't get a chance to get it to you. It's in the filming of The Passion of the Christ, and Jim Caviezel, who played Christ in that, it's part as far as where he'd taken the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering. And so he's got the crowns, and he's got all the blood, and he's got what's left of a robe, and he's sitting there, and it's on a break or something, and he's sitting there next to Mel Gibson, who produced the thing. And so Mel Gibson's just dressed like us, but Jim Caviezel's dressed like Jesus in blood with crowns. And I saw that picture, and it says, that time when you were telling Jesus how hard your day was. Listen, he loves you. And his love doesn't mean that he buys you out of hard times. His love means that he will join you in those hard times because he knows very well what it is to have a hard time. And he knows what it is for him to have a hard time and no one be there. Your hard time, he will be there. And he will love you. He waits, ready, and arms open wide to welcome you to his glory. If you've ever done the airport, it's really amazing sometimes to see the reunions that are there at the airport. Sometime, if you ever are, just do some people watching and watch. Some of it can be really moving, and you realize, you know what? That's because someone's been waiting for those that they love. That's what Jesus does. He's going to prepare a place, and he waits. That's what he's done. Next, he's released us. That's what John says, right? He who loved us, he released us from our sins. Please do not don't come to the idea that Jesus' whole purpose in coming was simply to help you feel a little better. Please don't think that Jesus came simply to soothe and massage your emotion. Jesus came to release you. And he came to release you from those things, listen, your own sin, that will corrode your soul and that will drag you to hell as a wasted soul. And you had no power over it. It had you in its grip, and there was no way you could escape it. And Jesus came, laid it all down, and paid the price to set you free from those things that would destroy you now and then. This isn't just about I'm here to massage your ego. It's not just here I'm here to soothe some feelings. It is here, Jesus says, I have come to set you free from those things that would destroy you and you can't escape. I would say this. If we buy into the idea that Jesus just came to massage our emotions a little bit, just know where that leads you. To a very, very shallow commitment. But if you see that Jesus came, laid it all down, to set you free from things that would destroy you, this life and the life to come, that's a different level of commitment then. We take him seriously, in my opinion. Third part. It says that he makes us something. He loved us. He released us. He made us a kingdom and priests. Funny thing happens when you become a child of the King. You're part of his kingdom. You are nothing less than a son and a daughter in the court of the great King. You are nothing less than the son and daughter in the court of the great King. Please don't diminish that. Don't diminish that by silly little games. I don't like them. Please don't diminish that by walking around tripping over your bottom lip because it's curled out so bad. Live up to it. He's made you a kingdom. I remember one time, I did a message. This is back in the Adamsville Road days, Elkhart, Indiana. I did a message, and I was just talking about that God's called us to be part of His kingdom, and we keep getting sidetracked because we keep getting distracted by all these things that don't really matter. And what happens is, by getting distracted by all these things that don't matter, we don't live for the things that do matter. And then what happens is, after the service, a fellow seeks me out, and he says, I just wanted to talk to you. I said, okay, what's going on? He said, I'm a little bit upset because no one acknowledged the flowers up front. Thank you for sharing. Thought, well, that was a wasted 30 minutes. We do this all the time at all sorts of levels. We embrace attitudes that we know are far less and far below the kingdom. We play little relational games that we know are far askew from the kingdom. You are a son and daughter in His court. You are a child of the King in His court, of the great King. We can't live shallow lives. We can't live petty lives. Don't let it happen to you. He laid down way too much to make you something better and bigger than you ever thought. And He made us priests. Priests do two things, right? They have full access to God. We don't have to go through another human being to get to God. What is it? The veil in the temple, torn, top to bottom. Meaning what? We all have access now. Hebrews 4, having access by the blood of Jesus, we can come with confidence. I don't need anyone to do my praying for me. I don't need anyone to talk to God for me. I can do that. He's made me a priest. But you know what else priests do? Priests do go to God on behalf of other people. They go to God on behalf of other people. I've taken to walking. I don't know if I told you all that or not. I take to walking, and I try to walk most every evening. And I have this little routine. It's silly, but I do. I have this little routine. And I simply, as I start, I thought, this isn't a fad. This is my life. And I tell myself that. Say, this is my life. I walk to work whenever I can because I'd rather burn fat than fuel. In the evenings, I take a serious walk to exercise my body, relax my mind, and talk to Jesus. And you want to talk to Jesus about? You. Because I'm a priest. And I talk to him about my friend Jeremy, and I talk to him about my nephew Ben. Talk to him about my friend Wendy and her family. Talk to him about Taryn. People who are far from God. Because I'm a priest. I go to God on behalf of other people. And there are people who their faith is shaky, and so I pray for them that their faith will be stronger. And there are those that I think probably haven't really realized just what He's released them from, so I pray for them. Word has it around town, I've got about I don't know how many, but apparently there's folks who don't like me. I know that's stunning, but you know what? Pray for them. Pray that God will bless them. And I pray that I won't be a cause of their stumbling. That their soul won't shrivel just because of me. You know why I do that? Not because I'm all that great, because I'm not. I do it because I'm a priest. Pray for those who do love me and who like me. I pray for Jen. And I pray for my sons by name. Every walk. Because I want to be a priest in my family. Here's my question for you. Who do you come to God on behalf of? Really? He made you a priest Priests come to God on behalf of other people. Who do you come to God on behalf of? That's a big question, and it's an important question to answer. And I'm out of time, and I got 1 point left. Y'all have time for me? Okay. Last part. This is from verses 17 and 18. John first told us who Jesus is. And he told us what he's done. And in 17 and 18, he tells us what Jesus says. This is a fascinating read for me. Listen. We have no idea in Jesus really who we're dealing with. Anytime you see people encounter the risen Jesus, Paul, it knocks him off his horse and he's blind. John sees him and he falls at his feet like a dead man. There's an unspeakable glory to who Jesus is that we have no idea. But those who would know Jesus best and knew him from his time on earth, when John sees him, he falls. And this is what Jesus says. Jesus says 3 things. He first says, don't be afraid. And his word to John is this: you don't have to be afraid of me. Remember, I'm the one who loves you. I'm the one who sacrificed. I'm the one that will be there with you every day. I'm the one that will be waiting for you. You don't have to be afraid of me. He's also, I think that idea of don't be afraid has some reach to it, because when we see what Jesus sees in regard to the churches, he's going to tell them the same thing. You live in Satan's backyard is basically what he's saying, but you don't have to be afraid. That's powerful. Folks, sometimes there's things that happen in this life, and it's frightening at some level, and we see some of the things happening in our nation, and that's frightening, I believe. But Jesus says you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid. Next, he says, I am. This is fascinating here. He says, I am the first and the last, right? I am the living one, he says. I was dead, but I'm alive forevermore. These are powerful words when you compare them to verse 8, when that's applied to God the Father. You realize Jesus, when he's saying, I am first and last, he's saying, I am God. And what's more, you know what the name for God, when he was asked, the name by Moses, the name that God gave, you remember? Yahweh, which means technically it more means I will be what I will be, but the basic idea is he is the great I am. And here's Jesus saying, I am the first, the last. I am the living one. I am. That's the name of God. Jesus is saying, I'm not just a great moral teacher. I am God. That's who I am. And then he says, I hold the keys. I think it says of death and Hades, which means the grave. He holds them. Listen, he holds them. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with someone. They had a very thoughtful question. We were chatting about some things as far as I'll just backstory. I was talking about how Jen's folks seem to get so many things right. And as they're now in their 80s, and they've already made clear in terms of their will, in terms of executor for the will. They've already laid out plans as far as a plan to try to move into progressive care as they're unable to do. And I thought, you know what? They've done all these things and they've spared their children those kinds of decisions to make on their behalf. And I said, he's doing it amazing. And that conversation led into the whole, that means you have to kind of face the reality of death, and that's kind of scary. And the person asked me a very thoughtful question. They said, really, how do you escape the fear with death and with dying? And I told her, I said, the only thing I know that really gives us a way to meet the fear of death is faith. everything else is artificial. Everything else is phony. And those who say, oh, sleep when I die. Oh, I'm not scared of you. Oh, yes, they are. Don't let that fool you. The only way that I know to genuinely meet the fear of death is faith. I'm not saying that to be cheesy, but I'm saying either Jesus holds the keys or he doesn't. And if he does hold the keys, then everything hangs on me putting my faith right there. If there's a lot I don't know, there's a lot that would be scary, but Jesus says not to be afraid. And Jesus says that he is the living one who was dead, and now he's alive forevermore, and he holds the keys. And if he holds the keys, I'm willing to trust him. And even if it seems kind of scary, I'm going to keep investing in my faith in him so that that faith will meet my fear. That's who he is. John tells us, before we ever get to what Jesus sees, we're told about the Jesus who sees. You remember him? Told us who he is, what he's done, and what he says.